Good evening. On March 9th, 2015, Officer Robert Olson of the DeKalb County Police Department shot and killed Anthony Hill, an unarmed, naked Air Force veteran. Today, the DeKalb County District Attorney's Office presented a 6-count bill of indictment to a DeKalb County grand jury. Count 1 alleged that Officer Robert E. Olson committed felony murder, and that while in the commission of the offense of aggravated assault, a felony did cause the death of Anthony Hill, a human being, by shooting him with a firearm. Count 2 charged Officer Olson with the offense of felony murder in violation of Official Code of Georgia 1651C. It states the said accused person in the county of DeKalb, the state of Georgia, on or about the 9th day of March 2015, while in the commission of felony offense of violation of oath of office by a public officer, as described in count 4, did cause the death of Anthony Hill, a human being, by shooting him with a firearm. Now, what you have to understand about counts 1 and count 2 is that they are felony murder. They are not malice murder. We did not present to the grand jury an indictment that alleged that there was malice or anger or ill will or anything like that. What's been alleged is that while in the commission of a felony, the officer in this case did cause the death of Anthony Hill, and those felonies are aggravated assault and also violation of oath of office, and I'm going to describe what that violation is in a few seconds. What you also need to understand are the 2 counts that deal with the death of Anthony Hill are charged in the alternative, count 1 and count 2, which means that we don't have 2 individuals that were killed, but we charge murder, or felony murder, I should say, 2 separate ways in this case. One with the predicate act of aggravated assault that caused the death, and another with the predicate act of violating an oath of office, which resulted in the death of Mr. Hill. Count 3 of the indictment charges Officer Robert Olson with the offense of aggravated assault in violation of OCGA 16521. And it essentially alleges that the defendant did make an assault upon the person of Anthony Hill with a deadly weapon, to wit, by shooting him with a firearm. That is the predicate charge for count 1. Count 4 is the violation of oath of office. It essentially alleges that, in a nutshell, that the officer, in this case, Officer Olson, violated his oath of office by violating the DeKalb County use of force policy. And that is a predicate for the felony murder that is alleged in count 2. Count 5 is making a false statement. It alleges in violation of OCGA 161020 for the said accused person in the county of DeKalb on or about the 9th day of March 2015, knowingly and willfully made a false representation to DeKalb Police Officer L. Anderson in the investigation into the shooting of Anthony Hill, a matter within the jurisdiction of the DeKalb County Police Department, a DeKalb County governmental agency. What it alleges specifically, ladies and gentlemen, is that the defendant falsely claimed that the victim, Anthony Hill, physically assaulted him prior to shooting him by pounding on his, parentheses, the defendant's chest. So that is a specific allegation in count 5 that Officer Anderson alleged that Anthony Hill pounded on his chest prior to the shooting. Count 6 is violation of oath of office, which alleges specifically that he did willfully and intentionally violate the terms of his oath of office, in that he essentially violated department policy by giving the statement that he gave, and physical assault, so forth and so on. Those are the charges that are in the indictment. Those are the charges that we presented to the grand jury today. We concluded around 6 o'clock, and the grand jury returned a true bill as to every count of this indictment. not very long ago, the Superior Court judge that's presiding over the grand jury, Judge Seeliger, issued an arrest warrant for the officer in this case, and I expect that he will be taken into custody here shortly. At this point, I can entertain any questions about procedure. I cannot talk about the substantive facts or what we presented or why we presented. I can tell you that we presented evidence for 8 hours in this case today. We started at 9 o'clock and we concluded somewhere around 6 o'clock with about an hour lunch break and some intermittent 15-minute breaks, and that we presented several witnesses. Beyond that, I can't really get into much detail about what was testified to today, but I will entertain any questions.
Was the false statement to Officer Anderson, was he the second officer on the scene? At the time of the shooting, was Anderson the second officer on the scene at the time of the shooting?
Yeah, I can't confirm any facts that would go into the substantive presentation of the case. You know, I can tell you what is in the indictment, that it's alleged that Officer Olson gave a false statement to Officer Anderson, and that false statement was that he was striking or pounding him on his chest.
So he's been indicted on all 6 of the charges, just for clarity's sake. He's been indicted on all 6.
Yes, there was a true bill as to all 6 of the charges. Yes, sir.
Procedurally, what goes forward now?
Well, what goes forward now is that the officer in this case, Officer Olson, is going to be taken into custody. He, I expect, will have an opportunity to have a court appearance here shortly. The next court appearance could be a bond hearing, a motion for bond, as we call it, or it could be an arraignment calendar, and a lot of that is going to be dictated by how his lawyers respond to the indictment today.
Did he testify before the grand jury today?
That's not something that I want to get into about whether or not he did or did not testify. I would direct you to his defense lawyers, and if they feel comfortable sharing that with you, then they'll do so. But that's a little too close to the line for me in terms of getting into the substance of what was done.
Does he have a window to turn himself in?
There was an arrest warrant that was issued by a Superior Court judge. I expect that he will be taken into custody here very shortly.
Any special protections at the jail because he's an officer?
That's probably a better question for the sheriff.
Do you want to say anything about the public, people camping, family, about that? Any public pressure? Did it sway anything in any way?
My job as a prosecutor is to seek justice. My job as a prosecutor is to match what I believe to be facts to existing law in the official code of Georgia, and to do what I believe is right under the law. And so that's what we do in every case, and that's what we did in this case.
What do you think was the difference between this and the civil grand jury, which was split, as I understand? What do you think was the turning point for them to come to this decision?
Well, I won't compare because, it's a pretty good question because it requires me to get into substantive facts that I said I wasn't going to get into. I won't compare and I won't go down that road, but what I will tell you is that the grand jury that heard the case and issued a civil presentment asked us to do more work and to do more investigation. And what I can tell you is that we took that seriously, and that's in fact what we've done over the course of the last several months. I think the presentation was in October. And since then, our office has been working tirelessly. To my left is my Chief Assistant DA, Nicole Golden. She's been leading that investigation. We presented 8 hours of evidence. So, I can't get into what that evidence was, but I'll just tell you we've been here since 9 o'clock this morning. So.
Corollary to that question, it is a good question. The bottom line is, what did you do differently?
Yeah.
What investigative work was done differently that was not presented the first time?
It's a good question, but it's not one I can answer.
What kind of message does this send?
I can't answer that question either. At this point, like I stated earlier, my job as a prosecutor is to, match facts to law. And if, after our review of the case, if we believe the elements of a crime are met, I have an ethical obligation to present that case to the grand jury. That's in fact what we did. And today, sometime around the 6 o'clock hour, they returned a true bill.
Can you say what the numbers were in the grand jury vote?
What do you mean the numbers?
How did they vote? Unanimously?
I can't get into that. I don't know that would be appropriate. So at this point,
All right, folks, one more question. You said you weren't able to tell us whether or not Officer Olson did give a statement at the end, though that was his right. Can you talk about how your case may have? Were you worried about that as a DA? Is that a concern? concern for you that that's the law in Georgia?
Well, I don't, maybe there's a better time for us to have that conversation, and I think there's probably a point where I'm going to be willing to have that conversation with you about the law in Georgia. I don't know that this is an appropriate time or an appropriate forum. Mr. Hill's family is here. Obviously, we need to be sensitive to what they're going through and what they're dealing with, and I don't want to politicize this by talking about a law or the need for a change in law, and so I think perhaps there's a better time to talk about that. So thank y'all.